Hello, everybody. If you're catching this on the replay, I hope you're having a great day. I am waiting for my co-host to join here, and then we will get started talking all about this book. Okay. Hello. How are you guys doing this evening?
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing good.
I figure we can give people a few minutes here to jump on. So what are you doing? What are you up to?
Oh, I just grabbed a sweater because it's cold. I'm sitting right next to the window and it's a little drafty out there today.
I know. Tomorrow's supposed to be even worse here. It's like, I don't know. At least it's not snowing, so I guess there's that. No snow.
I think if it's going to be this cold, I'd almost rather it snow. Like, then I feel like it's like all pays off. It's like, oh, there's some pretty snow to look at.
Yeah, they're home all day and I get nothing done. I'm in the basement, so I'm thinking like, oh, I wish I was working on a blanket right now because warmer. So I almost overflowed my cup of tea here.
Oh, nice. That's a good cozy one.
Ooh, still hot too. I burned my tongue off. Did you bring anything to work on today?
I did. So I'm working on like these plastic canvas things, like, you know, 70s retro plastic canvas stuff. So
the canvas phase.
Yeah, I don't know. I keep like to try like new hobbies all the time. So I've been like buying the kits rather than like going to the craft store and spending way too much money. So
why did I pay $10 for this when I can make it for $50?
Exactly. So I like bought some different crafts, like Christmas things to do, like when they were on clearance after Christmas. And I'm like, then I can totally get something done before next Christmas.
Yeah,
so.
Like now.
Yes.
That's pretty smart.
Like then I'm like ahead, and then I feel like, oh, it's January, and I'm like not finishing stuff from last Christmas. I'm starting on next Christmas. So
I saw your quilting update today for the little hearts quilt.
Oh, yeah.
That looks so pretty.
I got addicted to like, caught up in this one lady's like quilting patterns, and like I did one that was kind of like an Art Deco kind of style, and I really liked it. And then she released another one that looked really simple and it had hearts in it, and I'm like, oh, that'd be great for Valentine's Day. Well, it's very repetitive and not as simple as it looked in the patterns.
I think you've done a really good job with what I've seen so far, and I really like the colors of the fabrics and stuff that you've chosen. I think, are you going to lay them out like a gradient?
Yeah, so it's going to like blend from like a light teal to like a darker teal, like across like corner to corner on the blanket. So I'm excited about like the layout and how I think it's going to look when it's done, but might have jumped in a little bit too much on that. And it's probably going to take me longer than like the 4-week quilt-along that everyone else is doing.
Yeah, you know, you can do it in your own time. It'll be just fine. So you are doing it as a quilt-along, and there's like associated with it. Well, at least that way, if you get stuck on something and people are that much farther ahead of you, you should have plenty of people to ask for help.
Yeah, I do feel that I have like lots of resources and like things that like people can kind of help me out a little bit. That would be great because I'm very much a quilting novice. So
I've done exactly one quilting project, and I will never. That was enough for me. I don't like sewing, so there's that. I do it out of
I know your love for it is just deep and great in the not category.
Exactly. All right, well, I think there's some people that have joined us, so welcome everybody. We are here tonight to discuss The Only Woman in the Room by Marie Benedict. And this is a fictional telling of the real life of Hedy Lamarr from the 1950s and 60s golden age of cinema. But before we get into too much with the book, I've got my guest host Miranda here, and I would like for her to kind of introduce herself and kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself and fun things that you do and whatever you want to share.
Okay, so I live in St. Louis, Missouri with my husband and two boys. I used to be a research chemist, and now I get to entertain my children and take care of the house and do crafts and all those other things. I do a lot of volunteering with the schools and various things like that with careers and things to do with science and math. And yeah, I like to try like every craft known on the planet, and I have a messy space to prove that I've tried all those things. So yeah, I like to sew mainly, do other yarn crafts, crochet every once in a while, tried knitting. I currently have my mud room and laundry room torn apart, and I'm trying to like remodel that. So I was just at the store buying a table saw today.
Look at you.
I know. If I go in, I jump in with both feet.
Mind your fingers when you're sliding the wood through.
Yes.
Okay? Do that one.
It's got a nice guard protector on it, a push bar, so
that's necessary.
So yeah, I like to bake and pretty much anything that you can try and do yourself, I've tried to do. So
I like it.
I like fixing all the things myself. So
well, that's great. So you mentioned kind of how you like, tell me more about your sewing, because a lot of your Instagram is really focused around that. So I know we were talking just a few minutes ago that, you know, you've gotten into quilting here recently. For those that don't know, Miranda and I are actually friends in real life, but the funny story is that we actually did meet through a sewing group on Facebook. So we are, you know, virtual friends turned real life friends. So that's kind of cool. And whenever I have a project, because let it be known, I loathe sewing things. If it's something that I really don't want to do, I will say, Miranda, hi, what you doing?
I'd be like, yes, Kristen.
I'd never make it. So money well spent there. So I know that you kind of sometimes take custom orders, not really too frequently. You're kind of dialing back on it right now, right?
Yeah, it kind of like hits and misses. I kind of like the flexibility of being picky about what I choose to do. So it kind of just depends on the project and other things I'm working on. Like, so right now I'm working on remodeling part of my house, so I'm taking fewer like clients to do other things. But yeah, I started sewing, oh gosh, when I was probably like 7 or 8, and my grandma and my mom taught me how to do that. And then I did it off and on until my oldest son was a chunky little baby who was very chubby and squishy for his age. I could never find anything to fit, and so I kind of picked it up again. That's been, gosh, like 8 or 9 years ago now. Then I made the first outfit for him, and then I kind of like turned into a snowball from there. And I had to continue to make clothes for him. You know, he'd be like a size 6 wide and like only like a 3T tall. So and then my younger son has the opposite problem. He's like the size of like a 7, 8-year-old for height, but you know, everything will fall off of him the second I try to put it on. So
yeah. Well, that's the thing about, like, if I have to sew, I mean, that is one of the nicer things. Like, usually I've done some garments and whatnot, but mostly I use it for like altering things for my boys or for my husband, or maybe just like sometimes they go through pants so fast, and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, you just need a pair of pants to wear to school tomorrow.
I have been known to it's like, do I spend 2 hours washing all the laundry in the house, or do I go down to my sewing room and make 2 outfits in 2 hours? And so that usually ends up that, you know, I sew something instead of doing laundry. So then I make stuff for myself occasionally, like I made swimsuits mainly as my like kind of like prized pieces that I've made for myself that like actually fit and stay up and are cute. And
yeah, I think like that's one area where I wouldn't mind learning how to do that, but I am so intimidated by that whole project. Like the type of material that like I'm still not great at patterns, so like I can work my way through it, but it's tough, and I would just, you know, probably do that. That sounds like a Miranda project to me.
Yeah, so I did at the swimming pool last summer, like this lady like followed me around. She's like, "Oh, I love your swimsuit." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." Then she came up to me later. She's like, "Do you mind? Like, where did you buy that?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't. I made it." And then like an hour later, she's like, "Do you take custom orders?" And like, so I ended up like making this lady a swimsuit, like custom fit for her, like, because she just like she's just like, "I like the way that looks. I like, you know."
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, sure. Like, you know, so but yeah, I enjoy that mainly. So it's a good creative outlet.
I like it. Okay, so let's see. Oh, you know what? Since other people have joined in, why don't you show us what you're working on this evening? So it's not sewing and it's not crochet, but it's still yarning.
I'm yarning. Yeah, I'm like doing these little like, these will get cut out and like sewn together, 2 of them to be like little Christmas ornaments. So here's like the yellow one I'm working on. And let's see here if I can, this is what they're supposed to look like when they're all finished. So yeah, so that's my project currently. So hoping to get it done for my sister's redoing her living room in teal and red and gold. So
that actually sounds like the nursery that I did for James. I don't know if you ever saw that, or if I might have showed you pictures a long time ago, but they were in similar colors. So I have like so much spare fabric if you need it.
Oh, okay.
All right, cool. Well, before we get into too much of the book just yet, one of the things that I started doing with my guest hosts is I like to put you on the spot a little bit and have a little bit of fun. So, let's see. I wonder which kind of torture I'm going to submit you to this evening. All right, so I'm going to do a few this or that's.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Sure.
Let's see. Garments or accessories?
Oh, garments.
Prefer to make garments?
Yeah.
Let's see. Fiction or nonfiction?
Oh. Probably more fiction lately. I can read through it faster.
Yeah, it's like digestible a lot easier. Okay, would you rather meet your favorite author, or, and it can be dead or alive, or your favorite character?
Well, I'd have to say character because I don't really have a favorite author.
Oh, really? So who would
Yeah.
you want to meet then?
Oh, now you're gonna make me pick, huh?
I did say
like a fictional character or a real character, or
I'll take whatever you want, like
whatever I want to get. Oh man. Well, I just started reading again, so I'd have to like think.
Randall?
What's that?
I said you want to meet Fritz Randall?
No, I actually like my favorite character that I've read is I just read like the Golden Compass. And like it's like this whole trilogy, and like the main character in there was like a girl, and I don't know, she was very interesting. Even though it was written to a very young audience, I felt there's like a lot of maturity in there, and like, you know, daring and overcoming obstacles. And I don't know, it's kind of a character I could kind of relate to. I feel like we could have a nice cup of tea together or something like that.
You know, I think we have that book, and I got it a long time ago, and I tried to read it to my oldest, but I think he was too young for it at the time. But I should pick that back up for him and see if we have any better luck with it this time around. Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to do a couple would you rathers, kind of like this, a little bit more sinister. Would you rather untangle yarn spaghetti in every skein of yarn you ever use, or repair manufacturer knots in the yarn every 5 yards?
Oh, I would untangle the mess. I actually like really like doing that. It's like very satisfying to me.
Oh, hey, I mean, it's like you go digging for that center pole, and you're like trying to find it, and then you pull it out, and it's just this big thing of yarn.
Not.
Found it, you know. Would you rather struggle through to finish a book that's just not working for you, or be allowed only 1 paragraph per day of a book you absolutely love?
I'm like infamous for like if I don't like a book, like I'll just return it to the library. Like I never I'll never think that like, oh, maybe it'll get better, or like I like give you a chapter, like I should say like a third of the way. I try to struggle a third of the way through the book. If it doesn't get any better, I read the last chapter. If that doesn't have me like get sucked in, then like I'm done.
I have to be better about like not like putting them down and returning them, because I'm so type A that I really feel a compulsive need to finish something. But yeah, I need to get better about that. I'm trying, but would you rather struggle through it, or would you rather a paragraph at a time of a book you love?
Probably a paragraph at a time, because like I don't know, I don't say waste a whole day reading a book, but like if I'm really into something, then I don't get anything else done. So I'd probably take the paragraph a day, and then I could just like reread all the other paragraphs, right? Yep. Incrementally increase the book.
That's probably smart. All right, let's do one more here. Okay, you ready? Would you rather, I get these from Andrew, by the way, like he started doing all of these would you rathers, and so it just kind of got me thinking about a whole list of like, okay, anyway, I digress. Okay, so would you rather read a cliffhanger ending without any sequel or satisfaction, or have the author kill off your favorite character?
I'd say kill off my favorite character. Like I have to have closure.
Closure's important.
Closure's important to me. You can kill off like I will. Which books did I just finish reading? I don't remember which one. I have to go back and look now. But like one of like they build up this whole romance over the course of like 3 books between like this boy and this girl, and like you think they're gonna accomplish all these great things together, and it turns out that like she's forced to marry someone else and move away. And like I like bold like the whole chapter where that like happened, but like I would rather have that and like just like lose that character and all that stuff than like I have to have closure. There has to be like some reason or rationale behind the whole thing.
There has to be a point. Yeah. I got you. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit. Let's start getting into the book. So the book we picked, again, for those that there's been people just kind of hopping on, we read The Only Woman in the Room by Marie Benedict for our January Book Swips and Sips pick. And this is a fictional telling of the real life story of Hedy Lamarr. And you know, I always get questions like on books like this from people like, but if it's about Hedy Lamarr and she's a real person and this is actual stuff that happened, how is it fictional? How is it historical fiction? And the answer to that, in case that is on anybody's mind, is the fact that she pulls and infers a lot. So she puts a dialogue into it so that we actually have scenes and speaking parts and settings and stuff. But she's pulling this obviously from all of her research, just like anybody else would for any other type of historical fiction. But she's using sources that are, you know, a real life person, and drawing from those sources to create the dialogue, not necessarily word for word. So that's why it has to be called fiction. So while the book is a fictional telling of it, the things in the book actually did happen. So that's, I think, really important to note with something like this, because you know, especially with historical fiction, I always find myself at the end of a book, like looking for that author's note to tell me, okay, what actually happened and what was totally just made up, you know? So I just kind of wanted to address that quickly. But this is primarily a World War II historical fiction, and it's about Hedy Lamarr, who was a famous Hollywood actress who actually came from Austria, and she was an Austrian Jew who, at the behest of her parents, married a prominent arms dealer who ended up selling munitions to the Nazi Party and other fascist groups around the world and in war zones, etc. And the idea being that he would be able to hopefully afford her some modicum of protection at what the writing on the wall was already showing as far as like Hitler and everything. So she flees Austria to move to America, becomes a famous Hollywood actress, and little known to the rest of the world until really recently. I can't remember when I first heard about it. It's been within like 10 years for sure. It comes out that she's actually responsible for a piece of technology that made possible the probably what you're watching this on right now. If you're watching it on your phone, if you're using Wi-Fi to connect to the internet, that is all thanks to Hedy Lamarr. So that's just kind of like a general synopsis. Miranda, what was your first reaction, your gut reaction when you finished the book?
I really liked parts of it. It was really good. The two things that really stood out to me in the book was, well, given my science background, I really enjoyed how the themes and the ideas to her invention of this frequency hopping that she develops, how that kind of all pieces together. So, you know, a lot of times we're like, oh, somebody had a great idea. But like, it's not just like a poof an idea. It's something that like, you know, a little bit of information from here and experience over there. And like, I felt the author really worked all those little pieces in throughout the book before she discussed and Hedy, you know, worked on her inventing the actual hardcore part of inventing this technology. And it was really nice to just see like that whole process given justice. Like, it's usually kind of just glossed over as, oh, someone invented something, aren't they smart? And it never works that way.
Right.
But I thought that was an interesting comparison that, like, you know, we view that, how people just invent things and it's just a poop an idea, along with like the beauty. You know, oftentimes in this book and in society, you know, we're given this view that like, you know, beauty affords you opportunities and have a perfect life, and like that it's just one of those things that, you know, should just make everything wonderful and easy. And, you know, this book really looked at like how that's a burden and how, you know, Hedy struggled with it. I liked a lot of the dialogue and examples that were, I'm sure, probably mostly fictional, but they were still, you know, kind of really hit home about how that, you know, that how she struggled with that, and it did not necessarily make her life easier, and it was a burden in a lot of ways to her in her early life, and especially at the end, after she was a famous actress and like was trying to and was inventing at the same time. So
yeah, I get that. I think my biggest thing was how I felt sad and mad at how the world just, how it and society in general just took this amazing, larger than life woman and shrunk her down until she could fit in the box that they made for her. And I think that, you know, this is still something that's very much prevalent today. Maybe not to the same degree, but I think that we haven't come far enough. You know?
yeah.
And honestly, you know, I ended up looking into like her life a little bit more, and you probably know more about it than I I did a Wikipedia search and called it done, but I think you said you've watched
There's a really good documentary about her, and I don't know the name off the top of my head, but I mean, with real life interviews from her and her children. And I suggest you watch it. I mean, if you thought the book was sad, like in the interviews, like you can tell she's had like spent the later years of her life like heavily invested in like plastic surgery and what people think about her and like her appearance, that like she sounds like in her like prime of her life she was just an interesting, wonderful, intelligent person, and that through people's like shoving her in a box, as you said, like saying that, oh, it's only about your beauty and you're so wonderful, that like that's all she became, and that's what she became obsessed with. And I cry a lot of these things, sorts of things. I was like crying like the whole like end of the documentary when you could see her and how she interacted with people and just that. So if you're ricotta, I guess, enjoyed her story, I'd recommend, doing some more yarning and watch the documentary at the same time.
Actually, I want to be able to, I'm going to find it and track it down and try and watch it, because I do have a lot of interest in seeing it. I think one of the things that I found very interesting in the book was how the author used like ●𝗏𝗏, and I don't know if this is something that she kind of referred to herself and like this got pulled from her biography that is out there, or her autobiography rather, because she did write a book. But one of the things that ●𝗏 in the book says is that, her views of relationship as roles that she has to play or step into, and I found that very interesting, and it kind of made me ponder, is this something women do frequently, consciously or not? Like, I don't know, I'd be interested. What do you think about like?
Yeah, it was definitely something like I could feel that I could relate to. I would say like, especially like from the fact that like I did have a huge transition. Like I was a scientist, I was a research chemist, I have patents, like I did all these scientific things. And now that like I've become a stay-at-home parent, then like I kind of get put in this box of like that's not part of me, that I, my intelligence or my intellect or my knowledge in certain areas is like, it's like it's not even there. No one expects it. It's like that. And so I could definitely like, not nearly as accomplished as she was, but it's definitely something I could relate to, and how like you kind of have to step out of that. It's like, well, I have to put that person aside or that role aside, and now I'm mom, or now I'm wife, or now I'm starting to get to the age where like it's like now you have to be like caregiver to your parents, and like the way I find myself interacting in those situations is definitely different. And I didn't think I had a whole lot in common with an actress at all, but I could definitely relate to that shifting roles and interactions, was one of those things I would say definitely kind of caught me off guard and hit home a little bit too much.
I think it's interesting that you point that out, because, I feel like the role of stay-at-home mom is very much like, as soon as you tell, it's very dismissed, it's very,
yes.
You know what I'm saying, by society. I mean, you don't, and no matter how many women out there producing like all kinds of like content regarding, oh, we moms, we do it all, and still we get zero credit, really. Like, I mean, you just find out somebody's a stay-at-home mom, it's like, oh, that's all you do? Okay, well, you're done. Yeah, that's all I do. Sorry. Yeah, and I think it ties in kind of like what you were saying, like, so like you've got the scientist aspect, and like you want to be seen as more than just a stay-at-home mom, and she wants to be seen as more than just a pretty face, because back in that time, that's all what they cared about for women was, she was essentially a trophy wife for her first husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think that kind of mentality of wanting to be seen as more than just a pretty face, how do you think that spurred her on with her inventions and her like desire and her drive for something outside of, you know, the superficial?
Like, I think it's like twofold. The first part, I think, is that like it can definitely give you drive, like to try to like show people that you're not just that. I made some notes to myself here about like, you know, I wondered if like, you know, I mentioned like her first film, I think it was like Algiers or something like that. Like the director wanted to just like try this new technique, but he was waiting for a beautiful face, and she was like asking if she could practice, you know, what did she need to do, what did you do direction, and he's just like, well, just sit there, you know. And so I had like this vision in my mind of her just like sitting there, you know, and I just like wondered about all the thoughts that went through her head. Like, I mean, did she like think about different inventions and come up with all the details of them, or they were like just taking these shots of her face or just standing there and looking pretty, like only to like run home and like write it all out? Like,
yeah, sitting there silently planning their deaths.
Yeah, and so like that's one part of it, and then like the other part of it is really like, you know, we talk about this sometimes with kids or in education, like if you treat someone a certain way long enough, then they start to behave that way. Right. And, you know, I kind of feel like that this happened, that like, you know, she just got put in this box of that was no matter how much she tried, she was always put in this beauty actress box, and that she couldn't break out of until she just, I think, finally just collapsed under the weight of that and just became that person. So I can kind of see both sides there.
It's very sad. And I mean, you think of like this was not a rare occurrence in that time either in Hollywood. I mean,
and I don't think that it was just that time. Like, I think it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah. If there's
I mean, there's several actresses that have very high IQs and have done other things, like physics degrees from Ivy League universities, etc. And, you know, and still we just view them for their beauty and ability to act. So yeah. I don't think we've quite broken that cycle there yet.
Oh, I agree. We most certainly have not. Okay, well, before we go on too much farther, because I feel like if you haven't read the book, we're kind of starting to get into the spoiler territory here. So I'm going to give you guys just a couple of minutes if anybody needs to jump off. But before you jump off, hold on, don't go anywhere yet. I just want to let you know that, look at me, I actually have next month's book right next to me. This is like the first time that has happened. So next month, we are going to be reading The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I read this, well, I listened to the audiobook a couple of months ago, and I really liked it. And so now I bought the hardcover so that I can actually read it, because sometimes some books you kind of just need to do that with. So that is going to be the February book, and I will have that posted in all kinds of places. I'll be putting it in my Instagram profile, into the caption and or description of this video once I get the replay uploaded. And as always, you can see it on my landing page on my blog through my Instagram profile link, or through email. I'll be sending that out. So if you're on my email list, then you're set. If not, you can go ahead and go ahead and sign up for that, and you'll get those alerts when we have when we're ready with those announcements. So if you want to jump off now and don't want to ruin the rest of the book for you, then now is that time, and I will catch you guys on the next one. So bye, guys. But really, don't go anywhere, because I feel like an idiot, I swear. You know, and it's weird because every time I get on to do these things, I still get so nervous. And I've done how many of them? I don't even know. I get like these nervous butterfly feelings in my stomach. Anyway. So, okay. So if you're still here, I'm assuming you're good, and we can talk spoilers. So, one of the biggest things in the book, the biggest motivators for Hetty in the book for her actions is after fleeing. So I guess I'm assuming that people have read this at this point, because I don't want to have to go through and give the entire like background on the book. But so she flees her first husband in Austria because she overhears several conversations, sees the writing on the wall. Hitler's going to be coming into Austria, and Austria is just going to be welcoming him with open arms. And her husband has completely changed tacks to save his own skin. So he's, at least, I'm not sure if he was actually abusive in real life, but in the book he is. And she decides to go ahead and get the hell out of Dodge. So she flees to America via London, meets Louis B. Mayer and of MGM Studios, and then starts over basically. But she is plagued by all this guilt about having left without telling anybody about what she had overheard of the plans that the Nazi Party had for the Jews. She didn't even take her mom. So I think, that through in the book, her guilt at doing that is really what motivates her to try and do what she can for the effort to fight Hitler. So I think there was a point where she talked about it being like she wanted to be the sharpest blade of a weapon or something like that, right?
Yeah, something like that. Something about like the sharpest sword against I don't remember the exact quote though.
Right. So she has, I think she in the book, again, I don't know. This is one thing, can I just say, that kind of annoyed me about the book, was there wasn't really a really detailed author's note like I was hoping for at the end to kind of give me, if you want further reading, and then maybe just books where she got like her information from, like in the Nightingale, for example, Kristen Hanna is really good about, if you want to read more about this topic, you might consider these blah, 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 an itemized list of books. And I actually did go back and read some of those, and it's like, because I want to know what's real and what is made up or insinuated or whatever, what liberties got taken here. And I was a little disappointed that wasn't there.
Yeah, there was, I would say it was, okay, so Hedy Lamarr is like one of, like, she's a person of like that I really liked reading about. I would not consider myself an expert or like that I've done a lot of research on her or anything. So yeah, I kind of just took the book like as like being mostly fiction, that dates and locations and people were mostly true, and that everything else was kind of taken liberty with.
Right.
But
I kind of lost my own train of thought, to be perfectly honest with you. So if you have something else to add, go for it.
Oh, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't even know. So that was one thing I found really kind of disappointing about the book. I wanted to know more about like what was actual and what was creative license. And I'd be very interested in knowing if like she legitimately was. And I think that Hetty actually alludes to this in the autobiography that she wrote. That was redundant. That she was actually, held captive in her own home. I think she does allude to that in her autobiography. And I think that might be where Marie Benedict pulled that from. But, it's in the book, she reads a lot and teaches herself a lot of science and whatnot. I think that, I'm just looking at my notes. I'm sorry. I have the world's worst.
I mean, she seemed like a very curious person, like even from like a child. And I would say that probably fits with my interaction I've had with like highly intelligent people in general, is that like, you know, you're a curious kid who gets like spurred on by things by your father or those people around you. And it was great to see that relationship in the book, like kind of like come out with like, you know, her father helped her learn things and kind of was like supported her in kind of a non-traditional female pursuits for the time, you know, and that how that person, you know, it might not have been her father, it might have been someone else, but how that there's always that person there, like that helps, you know, people who push forward in whatever it is, whether it's women's rights or, you know, equalities for, you know, different races or whatever, that there's always someone who's like fostered that and, you know, pushed that person along. And so it was really nice to see that in the book.
Yeah. You know, you brought up her relationship with her father, but what I found really intriguing was the various relationships that she had with the other women in the book, which honestly didn't get hit on a whole lot. And that was also kind of something that I really would have liked to have seen. You know, when she first meets Louis B. Mayer. Is it Meyer or Mayer?
I think it's Mayer.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll go with what you say. Anyway, when she first met him, she met his wife. And immediately it was one of those situations where, you know, at least, again, this is all according to the book, it seemed like it was one of those situations where it's like meets like, you know, like they both recognize one another for their situations, for their intellect, and for their respect, their mutual respect for one another. And I thought it was very interesting in the book how, you know, essentially it was his wife that saved her from possibly having to, you know, commit sexual favors of some sort. It was very alluded to in lieu of, in order to get ahead in the field or in her career. So again, something that seems to still be very prevalent today. But I thought that was a really interesting kind of dynamic. I really would have liked to have seen more of that. And I don't know, what did you think about how she interacted with the women? What were your thoughts?
Man, I'm kind of with you, like where I really wish that like that had been built up, you know, a little bit more, that we could have had some even fictional insight, I guess, into what those looked like. You know, her interactions with the women were just, I enjoyed like the contrast between some of them. So like, you know, you said she felt like she had found like a kindred spirit in Mrs. Mayer, the Hollywood production's wife, you know, and how she, you know, they both recognized, you know, their independent spirits and, you know, their cunning and intellect, you know, to like get through this industry and not, you know, and to kind of like, I think there were other parts too that talked about like that they were both like women who could manipulate men, not like in a, you know, in a using sense, but like, you know, Hetty saw this as like, everything is like acting, you know, she would just have to read the other cast members, you know, even in real life, that and play to their strengths. And so I think that they kind of saw that, you know, that they were both capable of doing that. But I mean, she had the interactions with the other women, you know, she had friends from, you know, other co-stars and things that were mentioned in the book, and, you know, her interactions with them about worrying about what was really happening and in Europe and seeing those like actual friendships. And then she also had like theater friends from when she was young before she was married to Mr. Fritz. And, you know, and those, you know, it seemed like there's like a lot of jealousy there and a lot of, you know, cutthroatedness, you know, both in her early acting career and what she experienced in Hollywood. You know, there was mention of a couple times like she was struggling on sets in Hollywood with the other actresses and actors, and you know,
like the other one in the one movie,
yeah, and you could tell that there was just like a really like, you know, and then the fact that they talked about like all the parties they had to go to kind of like basically compete with each other, you know, which we could delve into a whole side thing about, you know, women competing with each other as a means of survival and what that's done to us. we won't head down that street for now. But I think there's another woman that you brought up.
So much time, we can't address that one tonight.
Oh, okay. So, but yeah, so I don't know. I mean, they felt like they were all like relationships that I could relate to. Oh, and with her mother as well, too, you know, that it was tenuous and there was jealousy and some of those other things that I think felt were very, I don't know, relatable.
It was interesting that even so long after, okay, so like, you know, she asks her mom why she always treated her the way that she treated her. Her mom explains how it was because that, you know, like she felt like her daughter being beautiful and intelligent and talented was too much, and that she needed to be kind of her, you know, like she needed to be curbed or she was going to get spoiled and all this. And I felt like that's something that maybe gets done at a certain age, especially of that generation. But I don't understand why it continued into her adulthood. Like why, and especially when it was very obvious that she wasn't spoiled and she was being abused by her husband and she was, you know, having problems, you know, like there were a lot of issues, and her mom pretty much just turned a blind eye to it, you know, like in the few scenes that we got at the beginning of part 1. And I thought that was very kind of like, I don't know, it was very weird. And I don't know if that's like a generational thing, if it's like a cultural thing, or just her.
I was a little wondered a little bit about that character relationship, like as you said, is like as it pertained to like over the course of the book, that it still continued. It didn't change with the dynamics like the other ones did. So
the other one I thought, the other woman who I thought was worth mentioning relationship wise was what was his name? Gosh, I'm totally the guy that
George?
Yes,
George. Was it Anfield?
Yes. Like how she comes in and she's like accusing them of having an affair, and like Hetty just like, I don't know, I thought it was very respectful. Like again, it was one of those situations, I'm going to be straight with you because I want you to know there is like, I'm serious about this. I don't know. I just thought that it was really cool how that was shown. And, you know, I don't know. I can't verbalize it.
How she was honest and respectful in her response of being accused of this affair without like being demeaning or like, how dare you accuse me of such a thing. She is just very like respectful. Like it was treated, I think, maybe how she would want to be treated. It sounds like from the book, you know, that she had been on the other end of that she had been the recipient of, you know, other affairs and in any of her relationships, and that, you know, that she could kind of say like, here's a woman that I can relate to, and I'm going to treat you with the respect that no one has given me. Everyone assumes that I am pretty, and because of that, men only want to sleep with me, and we could not be doing anything else. But let me, you know, help you understand what's going on here. So,
yeah. What did you think about the difference between part 1 and part 2?
Oh,
I know what you think, and if your thoughts align with mine, so go ahead.
I struggled so much for probably like 4 or 5 chapters heading into part 2. Like I read through part 1 in probably like a couple of days. Like I was really caught up in her character, and you know, I'm always fascinated by wealthy worlds, you know, it's appealing because it's novel to me, you know. You know, and so I was really caught up and like invested in her. Like I wanted to see her like escape, but I was kind of curious about like what her world was like. And I got to part 2 and it just felt like
choppy.
Like I had lost that choppies, I guess. Yes. a good word. Like, there were several parts I wish the author had either like added 100 pages to like tease out some of the more details in that, or like just skipped a larger chunk in the middle. Like, I felt that it was like a little bit too fragmented to get to the next section where it really talks about her inventing and her set life and some of the other things, where I felt the author kind of found herself again and I was able to relate again to the character. But there were some chunks in the middle there that were just really too partitioned, or choppy, I think is the word you use, that I think is a good fit, for that. So I would have really liked to seen part 1 as an older Hetty and new in a different place, and not as I feel like there's almost a style change too in the writing to an extent.
I see that. I think I was very similar. Like, I felt like part 1 was, I don't know if you've ever read anything by Kate Quinn. She wrote, she's written a ton of books, but like The Huntress, she focuses on World War II lit as well, but from different perspectives. But her, like, the first part of the book felt very cohesive. It was a great story. I was involved in it and invested in it. And then part 2 hits, and it started out really choppy. And then I also just kind of felt like the characters in that part never really, like, other than Hetty herself, and I almost wonder if the only reason this is the case for her is because of part 1, and like, if I didn't have part 1, if I would feel the same way, I don't know. But in my opinion, Hetty herself was the only one that really came off the page for me. All of the other supporting characters all kind of felt two-dimensional, like
flat, like they were just.
And it's like you were saying, like you said, you wanted another 100 pages so that way she could fluff and fill out the stuff that she kind of grazed over. I would have also have liked to have seen a little. I feel like she generalized a lot of the technological aspects of the like, I get what you were saying earlier as far as like showing how, like, you've got these, it's almost like gossamer strands, like an idea here kind of combines with something here, and like that part was done well. But I also wanted to see more of her science-y side. Like, I want to see, I don't know,
you wanted to really relate, that you could, I don't know, I felt like I wanted to relate to the woman that I feel like was hidden inside, and like I could relate to her in the first half of the book, but like she was still hidden behind like all this Hollywood stuff in the second half. And so like I do, and then the other part is that, and I wish this would have been brought up more, is that like she had more than one invention. So, her most well-known one, and the one that's gained traction, is the one that kind of allows, like, your cell phone to talk to the tower and not get confused with someone else's cell phone, and such. But she had, I don't remember the exact number for the number of patents that she had, but it was like over 10. And that's a significant contribution, especially from someone who like independently sought to invent these things and like have them patented, and the lawyers and the process. And like, it's a job. Like, I don't know what it was like in the 60s, but like I can tell you in like, in 2000s, it was like, it would take us patents that I worked on and I filed, like it would be like 3 to 5 years later before we'd get anything back on them. Like, it's like, it's a long, tedious thing. The applications were hundreds of pages long. Hers might have been like 20 or 30, but it's a lot of work. You really have to commit to something to like be like, I'm going to file a patent on this. So for her to have done so many, like I wanted to see that side of her, and I felt she was still buried.
Agreed. That really sums it up too, of my feelings. It's like, I feel like if I wouldn't have had part 1, I don't know that she would have really come off the page for me in part 2 either. I don't know. I just was really underwhelmed by part 2. And honestly, in general, like overall, this is my first book by this author. Have you read anything else by her?
No, I was tempted to kind of look at some of the other ones and see if she, does a better job or a more consistent job with different characters. The one about Einstein's, that's like Einstein's wife, like kind of caught my interest. So from the science, he's
Yeah, right. No, I mean, I think that one would be a really interesting one to read too. But yeah, I feel like she was trying to kind of write in a similar style of like Kate Quinn, who I mentioned earlier. But honestly, if this book hadn't been about a real life person, like if the characters had all been made up, I'm not sure I would have rated it very high.
I probably wouldn't have finished it. Like, I kept waiting because, like, I knew about Hetty. I knew what she did. I knew her story, and so the first part I found very interesting, but, like, I kept waiting for all these pieces that I knew that happened. Like, there was a lot of things that she did and contributed to various fields, including like Hollywood in general, like some of her inventions, like geared towards that. They're not all technology based and stuff. So like, I just, I wouldn't have probably finished it if I hadn't been doing it for this and hadn't known where it was going to end up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I think, I gave it on my Goodreads review, I think I gave it 4 stars, but if it wasn't, and that only reason I did that was because I feel like not enough people know her story. Yeah. And at least this is a good stepping stone into, finding out about it. And so I ranked it higher purely for that aspect. But otherwise, I just kind of felt like it was, I don't know, probably not on par with some of the other historical fiction that's out there.
I feel too that like the author was almost trying to weave too many themes into the book at once, like that there weren't like, so I'm thinking of the ending scene for the book and how, there's this great like show of like how Hetty has kind of like put aside her, inventing mind and become this like beautiful face that she's using in a way that she can to, help with the war efforts or whatever, and kind of accepting that role as a permanent thing. And like, but I also feel that she spent, if the author was trying to come to the conclusion that, that she did all this acting and the roles that we play, like that was a great conclusion. But, if it wanted to hit on the themes of like her inventions and her life and her contributions, like I still felt other things were missing.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I found that last kind of closing scene with, actually, that's one of the things in my notes here was the fundraiser for the troops. I thought it was a very sad passage that just encapsulated the struggle she faced throughout the book to find someone, which is another theme that I think was semi-developed, to find someone that, she could be her real self with. And when you think about how she was married 6 times and died estranged from one of her children and pretty much never went out of the house, I mean, I feel like she just never found that. And that's just so tragic, like for somebody who yearned and had was such a bright mind, yeah, it's just so tragic to me. But yeah, I got a little confused, like maybe this is kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, how, if you treat somebody a certain way for long enough, they start to act accordingly. And I think that might be what that last paragraph was about. Yeah.
That's who everyone had asked her to become.
And so she's like, well, I guess this is who I am now, like.
And it's like hard, like you get tired fighting, I mean, she was fighting kind of her own personal war, about who she was and what she wanted to do and how people saw her. And she had to balance that with like, how do I make a living? How do I survive? Doing all those things we touched on at the beginning of this conversation about how, we trade little, the things the different roles we play as a mom or as a wife or at work and like all those different things. And like, if people only tell you to do one of those things and that's all you're seen as, like sometimes you get tired fighting for the rest of them and you kind of just, accept it and walk that path.
Yeah.
And
what other choice do you have? At a certain point, you just get too tired and you kind of give in.
Yeah. So, and it is sad. It's I don't know, heartbreaking.
And I think one of the things that left me kind of like, one of the things she actually did cover in her author's note, she mentions that while the Navy rejected the technology when it was presented to them originally, Hetty and George went on to go ahead and patent it. And when they did so, the military then actually classified their patent as top secret so that nobody else could use the technology. And then the patent expired. And then they adopted it and then started having other people develop things for them using this technology, and so on and so forth. Everybody else, it's provided the foundation of so many technologies that we use today, and she never got to see a penny of it. Like,
yeah. Well, and I think the monetary aspect is one part of it, but I mean, she didn't even get any recognition until a year or two before she left. Yeah. I had I don't know, a lot of thoughts on that topic. Mainly because, I understand, given the state of everything that was going on and what the technology meant, I understand classifying it as top secret. That makes sense. But I also find it odd, having seen, and kind of building on what happened in part 1 of the book and how Hetty witnessed all the the friendship dealings, and how, when she was married to Fritz, and how those relationships and things influenced, the technology that was bought, or, the things that were purchased, and how the government was run in her home country. I find it odd that we think that things are different, or that she thought that things would be different here. Yeah, it is a great technology, and I do understand that people might have, balked at the idea that it was from a woman or all that, but also someone could have had lunch with someone else and committed to doing a different plan, or someone's brother might have owned the factory for this next production of whatever. I think that, I know she tried to do this to relieve some of her own guilt for some of the things she witnessed, and she wanted to change things, but at the end of the day, there were a lot of other moving parts that she really had no control over. And I think that with any new technology, we talk about technology disruptors and people who invent new things, but it's never an easy process, and it never is something that happens, in a year or two. It's always 10 years or or more that we see those changes, just because of all the things that kind of have to move along in order for that to happen. So
willing to cut some red tape and move things along faster.
I agree with you on that. So I think, the worst disservice is that, that she was never recognized for it, or any of it. Even once it was unclassified, or once they used it for other things, I read, they didn't even notify her that it was being used or implemented by anyone once they did declassify it.
I wonder if that's
I think that's what's that?
I wonder if that was a common practice, or if that was something specifically because it was her.
Yeah. I mean, because she filed under a different name and things too. So the people looking at it and using it would not have necessarily, I don't think, associated oh, this is the patent that movie star did. Right. She had other patents on other things, and it was
the soda cube or something that was did you see that?
Yeah.
They mentioned it in the book, and honestly, this is one of the reasons why I was kind of I didn't realize from reading it in the book that was her invention. It got so generalized that I didn't even realize that was hers until I went back later on to see what kind of other things that she invented, and I saw that on the list, and I was like, oh, well, that's just another example of how too much she flew over it too fast, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But anyhow, well, was there anything else that you wanted to add about the book tonight?
No, thank you for having me and letting me join in on a book about one of my favorite people.
Well, for joining us, I think that, you know, your unique background and, you know, especially having filed patents yourself, and has provided a very unique perspective to the discussion as well. So I think that's been very beneficial. So yeah, so thank you for joining us. Just real quick before we hop off, once again, next month's book is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I'll be posting that information on all of those sources that I mentioned previously. And I will have the replay if somebody is just joining late or wants to start it back over. I will be posting that all here on Instagram and on YouTube. So I will catch you guys on the next meeting, February 22nd at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thanks again, Miranda, for joining us tonight. And
thanks for having me. Have a good night.
Have a good night.